we're starting with an optic section. It's the thinnest beam possible. This one looks a little wide because of the setup. So look at the angle between the illumination and the viewing system. That's what gives us a nice cross section. So that's the front of the cornea going towards the posterior cornea, and in a moment you'll see the front of the lens or anterior lens going towards the posterior lens. You widen that beam to 1 to 2 millimeters, that's when you get a parallelepiped. So that's used in our next technique, which is the sclerotic scatter. So you have to get the lighting so that it does total internal reflection and it makes a glow all the way around the limbus, so that if that's a glow, yeah, so that if there's a lesion, you'll be able to see it. So it enhances contrast for those kind of things. So that's the setup that you need. The shortened beam is to help reduce the glare. Low magnification is so you have a good view. So either you move this system transversely until you get the glow, so we'll see that in a moment's time. So watch as he's moving the system to the side, he kind of overshoots and then he gets the glow. So I just put it on a repeat again. So that's one technique you can use. The technique you can use is to actually uncouple the lighting system. So you keep your focus on that particular area of the cornea and you just uncouple the light and keep moving it until you get that stromal glow. Sorry, limbal glow. I just got distracted by that skipping of my image. Talk about retroillumination. So it's when we're using the light of something in the back, so in this case the iris, to view something more in front, like the cornea in this situation. So this is just another example. This one is indirect retroillumination. So the object we're looking at is not directly over the iris. And indirect really help us enhance contrast of something. So it's the same as when you're looking at your face in the mirror, and depending on the light source, sometimes you can see things like wrinkles or pimples and other times you can't. Here is retro of the fundus, and you can see the texture on the lens that otherwise might be a bit more difficult to see. So these are the setups, and I'll explain the difference in the illumination angle in a moment. But for the time being, here's another nice example. So you can see the corneal scar down the bottom, that's with direct illumination, but you can also see indirect retroillumination, the kind of shadows of that scar. So with the iris, we do use a wider angle, but have a look. When we do that on the lens, you'll see it's kind of more like a cross section, but we won't really get a great view or the reflection from the fundus. But as the angle's narrowed, you'll get that kind of orange or red reflex, and you can narrow the beam just to reduce glare. And watch in a moment, you can see those lenticular opacities, which otherwise it was pretty difficult to see. Okay, so although you lose depth, more contrast. So now we're on to specular reflection. So you'll know the angle of incidence equals angle of reflection, and we'll be focusing on the corneal section, and we want it to make it overlap that reflection, okay, which is called a Purkinje image. So I showed a few examples just to make sure you guys know what I'm talking about. So this is a bit clearer, so you just make sure that corneal section goes right on top of that corneal reflex. This is a more realistic image. And watch as this person, so they narrowed the beam. By the way, it's only a monocular viewing technique, so you'll only be able to see this out of one eye. And you might as well narrow the beam because you're only seeing it in that area of overlap of the Purkinje image. So the resolution is not too great, but you'll be able to see a reflection at the front, which is on the epithelial side, and a reflection on the endothelial side, and that's what we're looking for. So you'll try to see that kind of texture of the endothelial cells. This is the best resolution I could find online, but you'll be able to see it with a microscope. Hopefully this helps a little, and good luck with your exam.